Russian gas supplies to Europe via Ukraine came to an end on New Year's Day. It brings down the curtain on Moscow's long period of dominance of supply in the European gas market. Russia's oldest gas export route to Europe is a pipeline dating back to the Soviet days. The deal expired after Ukraine's Naftogaz refused to renew its latest 5-year transit deal with Russia's Gazprom. Ukraine's energy minister German Galushenko called this a, quote, historic event. Russia is losing its markets. It will suffer financial losses.
We will not continue the transit of Russian gas. We will not give them the opportunity to earn additional billions on our blood. Any country in the world that could receive something cheap from Russia, in the end, tomorrow, in a month, in a year, will become dependent on the Russian Federation. This is their policy. That's why we won't transit Russian gas anymore.
They announced that there won't be a contract. They won't extend it. Then they realized that it's a problem for them. They started to panic. How did this panic manifest? They started reaching out to everyone, essentially asking someone other than Naftogaz of Ukraine to sign a contract for transit through Ukraine's territory so that the gas would be managed by Gazprom up to the border, and then, within Ukraine, under someone else's control, say Hungary, Slovakia, Turkey, or Azerbaijan, to sign a contract for transit through Ukraine's territory, and at the border with Europe, Gazprom and its partners would handle it. The problem is that Gazprom has long-term contracts, lasting until 2035, until 2049. In order to change the situation regarding transit, these contracts would have to be broken. Very complicated procedure, very hard to resolve, if not impossible. And there's another thing.
These pressures on supply and demand have driven gas prices up by roughly 50% so far this year. European countries heavily reliant on Russian gas are navigating a complex energy landscape as U.S. sanctions on Gazprom Bank take effect on December 20, 2024. These sanctions have created significant challenges for nations like Slovakia, Hungary, and Austria, which rely on long-term contracts with Gazprom.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going deep on a story that's changing the world as we know it. The end of Russia's gas dominance in Europe. You've sent us a ton of reports and analyses, and well, we're here to make sense of it all.
Yeah, a lot to unpack for sure.
Especially that image, that pressure gauge reading 0 on the Ukrainian pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
It really sets the stage.
Powerful symbolism.
So let's start with Ukraine and Moldova.
Okay.
They're on the front lines of this energy shift. What are the immediate consequences?
Well, for Ukraine, it's a loss of about $800 million a year in transit fees.
Wow.
According to the International Energy Agency's report. A tough financial blow during wartime, but they see it as a step towards energy independence from Moscow.
In Moldova, they relied so heavily on that gas flow.
Right.
This must be a precarious situation.
It is. Moldova is facing a harsh winter with very few energy options. They're slashing gas consumption by a third, and they have to find new sources.
Wow.
There's a quote from a Moldovan journalist in one of the articles. They said, "We're feeling the pressure of this looming crisis and are very uncertain how we'll cope."
Really humanizes it.
It does.
Okay, so zooming out a bit, who are the winners and losers in this new energy landscape? Is Europe suffering as much as some headlines suggest?
Well, it's complicated. Europe has been diversifying its energy sources for years, anticipating this very moment.
Smart.
There's data in this Bloomberg article showing they've significantly increased imports of liquefied natural gas, LNG, from other countries, and they've been investing heavily in renewable energy.
So Russia's influence over Europe's energy, it's waning, right?
Right, absolutely. Right. Russia's share of Europe's gas supply has plummeted from 35% down to just a trickle. The loss of that Ukrainian pipeline is a major setback, but Russia is pivoting, redirecting exports to Asia, China, and India mainly.
Okay, so this isn't just a European story anymore.
Nope.
It's a global power shift. You mentioned the BRICS nations. Can you tell us more about their role?
Yeah, so the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they're gaining more and more global influence. Their economic power is growing, and Russia is strengthening ties with them, building new alliances.
Okay.
An analysis from The Economist highlighted how India has gone from a small importer of Russian oil to a key player, even refining it and selling it back to Europe.
Wow.
a development that few predicted.
Really shows how unpredictable the global energy market can be.
It does. It really highlights how unpredictable the energy market can be. So we've seen how the halt of Russian gas transit through Ukraine has sent these shockwaves across Europe and beyond. But what happens now?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
They can't just snap their fingers and replace all that Russian gas. What are the options?
Well, diversification is key. Europe's been actively working on this, as we can see from those increased LNG imports from places like Qatar and the U.S. But remember what we talked about earlier, those potential complications with Qatar? And then you've got President-elect Trump's America First energy policy. Adds another layer of complexity.
Right, it seems every potential solution comes with its own hurdles.
Mm.
Is there a way for Europe to lessen its dependence on those external sources?
Mhm.
What role can renewable energy play?
Well, that's the long-term vision, and the EU has been pouring investments into it. Solar, wind, hydro, these sources are becoming more and more vital, but the transition takes time,
Sure.
and it requires substantial infrastructure development. A report from the International Renewable Energy Agency emphasized that while Europe is making progress, achieving true energy independence through renewables is still a long way off.
So it's a race against time.
Yeah, they need to bridge the gap between their immediate needs and a future that runs on renewables. And that's where things get really interesting. Countries are exploring some innovative solutions to address this challenge.
Oh, I'm all ears. Give us some examples.
Okay, well, Germany, for instance, is really going after the development of green hydrogen, which is hydrogen produced using renewable energy. It has huge potential to revolutionize industries like transportation and heavy manufacturing. A recent study by the German Energy Agency really outlined that.
Sounds promising. But what about countries still heavily reliant on Russian gas, like Slovakia? What are their options?
It's a difficult spot for them. In the short term, they might have to rely on their neighbors for energy supplies, and that could cost them more. It really underlines the importance of energy independence, something Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico has been very vocal about.
This whole situation shows how interconnected the global energy market is, when you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
One country's decisions can have consequences across continents.
And those consequences, they reach way beyond the price of gas. We're talking about shifting geopolitical alliances, new economic partnerships, and even social and environmental impacts.
So how does this energy shift affect the average person? What should our listeners be watching for in the coming months and years?
Well, keep an eye on energy prices, for one. That increased demand for LNG, the scramble for new sources, it's going to push those prices up. It could affect your wallet directly, higher heating bills, increased transportation costs, even the price of goods and services.
That's not good. What else should we be aware of?
Pay attention to those advancements in renewable energy technologies. The pace of innovation in that field is just amazing. We're seeing breakthroughs in solar panel efficiency, battery storage, even new technologies like wave energy. Those advancements could lead to cleaner, more affordable energy for everyone down the line.
So there's hope for a more sustainable future.
Oh, absolutely. But it takes a combined effort from governments, businesses, and people like us. We all have a role in shaping the energy landscape.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into Europe's energy reckoning. We've seen how Russia's lost gas dominance has really set things in motion.
It really has.
Nations having to rethink their energy strategies and those new alliances being forged. So now let's zoom out even further and look at the global impact of this power shift.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
How the shutdown of a few pipelines in Eastern Europe can send these shockwaves around the world. What are some of the key trends you're seeing in this new energy world?
Well, the global energy system is so interconnected, it's astounding.
Yeah, it is. What's standing out to you?
One of the biggest things is the rise of new energy powerhouses. We talked about India's transformation.
Right.
But there are other players entering the scene too. Countries like Qatar and the United States, both major exporters of LNG, are seeing their influence grow as Europe looks for those alternatives to Russian gas.
You know, it's interesting. This crisis has created both opportunity and tension.
Definitely.
We talked about Qatar's warning to the EU
Right.
about those human rights concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got President-elect Trump's America First policy, likely to cause some friction as well. It seems every partnership comes with its own set of complications.
It does. And those complications can have big consequences. Imagine if Qatar actually cuts off those LNG supplies to Europe.
Right.
Or if Trump slaps tariffs on European goods because they're not buying enough American energy. Things like that could lead to trade wars,
Yeah.
economic instability, maybe even military conflict?
It's a pretty unsettling thought. Are we really heading toward a future where energy is weaponized?
Well, it's a possibility we can't ignore. I mean, we already saw Russia use energy to exert political pressure.
Right.
As global energy demand keeps growing, we're going to see even more competition for resources.
Yeah.
And that could lead to more conflicts, especially in areas with lots of energy reserves.
So what can we do? How do we lessen these risks? Is there a path towards a more stable and secure energy future for all of us?
The key is cooperation and diversification. Nations need to work together to build a global energy system that is more integrated and more resilient. This means investing in renewables, making energy use more efficient, and exploring new technologies like green hydrogen. There's a report from the World Energy Council that emphasized just how important international collaboration is for this energy transition.
That makes sense. But getting that level of global cooperation seems pretty tough right now.
It is a big challenge,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's impossible. This current energy crisis, it has exposed how vulnerable we are when we rely too much on a single supplier. It's a wake-up call
Yeah.
to move toward an energy future that's more sustainable and more equitable.
So for our listeners, as they navigate this really intricate and ever-changing energy world, what are the key things they should keep in mind?
Well, first, never forget that energy is power.
Right.
Whoever controls those resources, how those resources are distributed, that's going to shape global politics and economics for years to come.
It will. What else is crucial?
Don't underestimate the power of innovation. New technologies, new solutions, they're constantly emerging, and they offer a chance for a cleaner, more sustainable future.
Innovation is key. And finally, what's the last takeaway?
Stay informed.
Yeah.
The energy world is always in motion. The more you understand the trends, the challenges, the better choices you can make about your own energy use, and the better you can push for those policies that promote a secure and sustainable future.
This deep dive has been a journey, that's for sure.
It has.
Unpacking all the twists and turns of this global energy shift. A story of power, politics, innovation, and survival.
Absolutely.
And it's a story that is still being written.
It is.
The choices we make today are going to determine how this unfolds. And the stakes, they couldn't be higher. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Europe's energy reckoning. We hope it's given you some valuable insights and a new perspective on what's shaping our world. Remember, stay curious, stay informed, stay engaged, because the future of energy, well, it's in all our hands.